The JP Morgan Round the Island race is so special for the amount of people that are taking part in the race and the number of different types of boats, and the course itself around the Isle of Wight, and it really brings all sorts of people who may not have necessarily sailed before against sort of hardened professionals, and it's a great mix.
This is BBC Radio 4, and now the shipping forecast issued by the Met Office. The general synopsis at 1800. Low southeast Iceland 990, moving away northwestwards by 1800 today. Dover white, east or southeast 4 or 5, occasionally 6.
The idea came up in 1930. Major Windeler had a vision of a race around the Isle of Wight for boats from 5 to 25 tonne, and the first race was held in 1931.
Yachting was always very popular. There'd be a good number of people ready to catch the first gun of the morning. My grandfather would have photographed the first race, my father in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and I started photographing in the 1960s. It's always been a great pleasure photographing around the island. We always look forward to it every year, and it's perhaps the high point, the main race of the year.
Entries by 1939 were up to about 80, and the government then banned racing because of the war, and then it was restarted again after the war.
The 50s was when entries first broke 100, then 200. Groundbreaking yacht designer and Cowes resident Arthur Fox amongst them.
A vast armada of yachts, over 350, provided a magnificent spectacle as they set off on the 60-mile round the island race.
Yachting generally took off in the 60s for two reasons. One was the advent of fiberglass, so you would have production boats, standardised boats, not exactly mass-produced boats, but batch-produced boats, and the prices came down. It went extremely well, and very quickly, of course, owners realised that there was a lot to be said for having a plastic-hulled boat, and the yachting industry took off.
And the race to win the gold Roman Bowl for the fastest boat on handicap intensified.
1961 was the introduction of multi-hulls, and Snow Goose was the first boat. She held the race record at that time of just over 6.5 hours.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Day 312, about 25 past 3 on April the 22nd, and Robin Knox-Johnson and Sue Haley have sailed non-stop around the world.
In the 70s and the 80s, the numbers picked up from about 500. We went up to about 1,800 boats. We then got boats racing around the island, not necessarily to win, but just to compete in this particular race, which is quite unique.
In the 70s, British Prime Minister Edward Heath became the most successful skipper in the race's history.
To win the gold Roman Bowl once is an achievement, but to win it 4 times is something exceptional. He was over the moon. I was his duty driver, if that's the right way of putting it. Helmsman, I suppose, is the right word. And it was a great privilege to be able to do it. He loved the sport of sailing, and he just thoroughly loved being aboard the boat. It was his complete relaxation. You know, he was a Prime Minister. He had a lot of things on his mind all the time, but the minute he stepped aboard the boat, he relaxed, and he was one of the lads. He was a wonderful man to sail with.
The next 20 years saw big names come and play, and race records broken.
The record for round the island race at the moment stands at about 3 hours and 8 minutes, and it was held by the Frenchman Francis Juin in a multi-hull.
And multi-hulls at the front of the fleet, with famous sailing names in charge, became part of the day.
It was one of the most incredible sailing days of my life, racing round the Isle of Wight in an Extreme 40. I mean, it doesn't get better than that, and home for 9 o'clock and an early breakfast.
The scale of the race now attracting big names from outside the sport to drop in.
It's incredible. It's very, very technical, and the cool thing is it's got a lot in common with Formula 1, you know. It's just mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing. I've had an awesome day.
From a few club sailors to thousands of competitors. From works of art to be cherished to carbon fibre racing machines. From a day at sea to a sprint around the island. You could say everything has changed. But that would be missing the point.
If a competitor came back and he'd competed in the first race, he'd look at today's race and he'd say, nothing's changed at all. You're up early, the smell of bacon and eggs is wafting round the harbour. You put on your oilskins, you get out on your boat. Essentially, it's the same course and the same race.
And whilst the world has moved on over the last 80 years, the spirit of this race is just as it's always been. For everyone, whatever their ability, whatever their sailing. Thanks to Major Cyril Windler's bright idea 80 years ago. And thanks to the members of the Island Sailing Club in Cowes, who make it all happen.
I think everybody has a different way of feeling, but they've all achieved something. They've raced around the Isle of Wight. It's a unique event and they've had a good day. Whether they come first in their class, whether they come last in their class, or whether they're the last boat to finish, they all put their hands up in the air and have a good old cheer when they cross the line because they've had a fantastic time, and that's what it's all about.